Okay, so Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good morning. Um, this is the second topic related to our class Introduction to Literature, where I will tell you briefly about history and British literature. Okay, so the title is about literary periods in British literature. So if we talk about literature, of course, it have all countries have their own literary work. Okay, uh, Europe, Asian, American, America, and here I choose to tell you briefly about British because it has long story history, and it is also related to the history of language as well, and many famous poets, authors that you may have heard their names before comes from British. Okay, so I will just start because it will be a long journey. We will look to the very old period until the modern period. Let's just move. Yeah, to be or not to be, that is the question. It is a very famous quotation from Hamlet, which is written by William Shakespeare. Um, I don't know if you have seen this one, but I think many, how to say, common people, I mean, ordinary people know about William Shakespeare, that the very famous, perhaps in Indonesia, yeah, the very famous title from his work is Romeo and Juliet. Okay, but actually, Hamlet is famous, and it's written by the same author, which is who is William Shakespeare. Okay, here is the periods. So if we talk about British literary periods, then this is the development of the periods start from Old English and then move to the Middle English and then the Renaissance, Neoclassical period, Romantic period, Victorian period, and then the last one is Modern period. I decided to explain until this one because it's already a long, a long time. Yeah, and I said before that this actually, when you learn about history in England, then you also will learn about the history of the language itself. I mean, the history of English. Um, but you will learn about that in more details separately in different subject. I think the name of the subject is History of English. I don't know in what semester you will get if you are in studi lanjut ya, tapi you will get the subject. So there you will learn the development of English until it becomes the language that you know today. Okay. So here this is a very brief one. So if it's on Old English, then it's Beowulf. If it is Middle English, then it's Geoffrey Chaucer. Renaissance, then William Shakespeare. Neoclassical period, it's called Age of Reason. And the Romantic period, there is William Wordsworth. Victorian, Charles Dickens. And the Modern period is signed by this very, how to say, yeah, it's not correct to say it's famous, but yeah, I think many people all people already know about World War One. Let's just move to the very first period, which is Old English. It starts from 450 until 1066. Old English period is also known with Anglo-Saxon period. Um, Anglo-Saxon is taken from the Germanic tribes, but long before they came to England, there were other, how to say, invaders, let's say invaders or maybe inhabitants, long before these tribes came to England. So the first one, so again, it is just a brief introduction. We will not talk very deep about the history of the England. Okay, So I just take from the first tribe is Celts. So Celts is a very old tribe. Hmm, kalau kamu sering apa ya cari-cari tentang sejarah Inggris pasti pernah dengar dengan tentang suku ini ya, Celts. And then after that there were Romans bangsa Romawi. So this so when Celts there is let's say animation or paganism, okay, you can say like that. Um, karena dia lebih banyak percaya apa ya istilahnya animisme gitu ya. Jadi dia ada istilahnya ada druids sebagai pemimpinnya, pemuka agamanya seperti itu. Tapi agamanya bukan yang agama yang kita kenal sekarang. Yeah, the next one is Romans. So Romans, they brought Christianity to England, but then because of the, the attack to the Rome, then the troops left in 407. And after that, there comes these tribes, Germanic tribes called Anglo-Saxon. These Germanic tribes had three names. I mean, three types of names, and they are different. I mean, they inhabited different part of England. First one is the Angles, and then Saxons, and then the Jutes. Nanti silakan kamu cari sendiri aja ya. Misalnya di Angles itu tempat tinggal mereka dulu, sekarang jadi negara kota apa gitu ya. Silakan dicari sendiri. Kalau saya jelaskan terlalu panjang. Okay. The next one is the Norman invasions. So Norman invasions is the invasion of Norman. So Norman here led by William the Conqueror. This person then ruled England, so he won in a kind of battle. Jadi dulu kan banyak perang lah ya di Inggris itu. Kalau kamu suka nonton film, banyak kok pasti itu perang-perang namanya di situ, nama-nama perangnya ya. Dan untuk di Old English, kemenangan William the Conqueror itu kemudian menandai berakhirnya Old English. Okay. That's the brief history. Let's talk to about the literature. Then, so Anglo-Saxon literature, the very famous one is Beowulf. If you haven't read, of course you will never read this one because it's Old English. It's written in Old English, which the language is, let's say, unfamiliar or maybe unknown to us. So here is an example. You can see it here. This is the word. These are the words, and it seems like we read a foreign language, right? But actually this is an Old English. Okay. Nah, untuk di Anglo-Saxon literature sendiri, mostly they are written anonymously, makanya Beowulf ini tidak diketahui siapa yang menulisnya. Okay. And then mostly they are oral literature. They don't really people at the time don't really how to say people at the time are illiterate. Okay, illiterate means can't read, can't write. That's why most of the literary work is in the form of oral literature, and then it's not in the form of short story, but mostly it's poetry or song. Yeah, can be. I remember that poetry. Nanti in the next meetings you will learn that there are many types of poem. One of them is ya banyak lah ya nanti dipelajari. And for this poetry, the type that is commonly found is epic or heroic with many alliteration, metaphorical phrase. Alliteration means repetition ya. Nanti lebih detailnya di ketika bahas puisi nanti ada alliteration, so there is repetition in the word, like it's like you read a tongue twister. Yeah. How many would chuck yeah. So there are repetition. There are sound repetition in that line. So that's alliteration. And then for the drama, mostly it's introduced by the Romans. And the popular work again it's Beowulf, and then King Alfred the Greatest translation from Latin, and the Pastor's Book. Jadi jadi untuk yang kayak sastra yang kita kenal sekarang itu yang lebih terkenal adalah Beowulf. So that's for Anglo-Saxon literature. Now we move to the second one, which is Middle English. So after the Old, we move to the Middle English. It's from 1066 to 1500. Um, Remember that English, okay, English at that time is not English that we know. Um, so the people at the time mostly they use French for the, let's say, the higher rank people, and the higher rank status people use French for their language. It's because Norman William the Conqueror comes from, who conquered England, okay, um, came from French. Makanya bahasa Prancis untuk orang-orang kalangan atas. Sedangkan bahasa Anglo-Saxon, which is adalah cikal bakal bahasa Inggris, are used by the lower class people. The poem that is written in this period was about magical romances, about the topics about love and adventure. Yeah, it's about adventure, like apa ya, kesatria gitu ya. Jadi topiknya masih mirip-mirip dengan Old English, about knights and etc. And the most widely known writings are belong to Geoffrey Chaucer's, which titles is the Canterbury Tales, or also there's also the Anonymous Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, or Thomas Malory's Le Morte d'Arthur. I really hope I don't mispronounce this title. Jadi kalau kamu juga pernah dengar Le Morte itu, kalau saya nggak salah ini kematiannya Raja Arthur. Biasanya cowok-cowok tak pernah lah nonton, tahu lah namanya King Arthur ya. King Arthur tuh banyak banget sudah difilmkan, mulai dari yang animasi sampai yang film ya Hollywood dan segala macam. Yang paling terkenal mungkin dari King Arthur itu adalah kesatria penjabundarnya, Round Table Knights. Yeah. And then ada juga apa, penyihirnya, sama Marlin ya, kalau saya tidak salah. Ya, itu. Tapi untuk in this period, this is the Thomas Geoffrey Chaucer is the most famous one. The title is Canterbury Tales. So in this Canterbury Tales, it's kind of story collection, but it's not in the form of short story, it's in the form of poem. Jadi bukan dalam bentuk cerita pendek ya kayak sekarang antologi dan segala macam, tidak, tapi dalam bentuk puisi yang dikumpulkan. Dan itu tentang kisah kesatria. Yeah. So that's Middle English period. The next one after the Middle English is the Renaissance. So the Renaissance, okay, please. The Renaissance actually is a period that happens around the world. I mean, it's not only happened in England, but in English specifically, it came late. Jadi zaman Renaissance itu banyak ada di Prancis, Itali, dan segala macam, itu di Eropa, tapi ketika tiba di England dia agak telat. Ya. So itu di tahun 1500 until 1660. The Renaissance itself in England was divided into three age. Okay. Jadi ada zamannya Queen Elizabeth, and then King James, and then King Charles, and the last one is Commonwealth period. If we talk briefly about the history, then how to say it, zamannya King Charles sama Commonwealth period are the most chaos period. So here there was apa namanya itu, perang saudara, civil war, ya, civil war in England itself. Jadi antara raja dan rakyatnya, tentaranya, oke, saya salah, raja dan pihak gereja kalau saya tidak salah ya. Maka kemudian makanya the effect of that, King Charles was defeated. So in 1649 until 1660, where the Puritans won the battle, that's why it's called Commonwealth period or Puritan interregnum. This is the period where England was not ruled by a king. If you know the history, then you know that England was famous for their monarch, right? King Henry, Ratu Victoria, Ratu Elizabeth. Sekarang paling terkenal kan Ratu Elizabeth II, Pangeran William, Pangeran Harry gitu ya. But actually in their history there was one period, one age where the country was not ruled by king. Okay, it's called Commonwealth period. Itu karena ada kekacauan internal internal masalah itu ya. And it affected the literature at the time. Let's see. So in the Renaissance literature, the dominant arts were literature and music. Untuk seni ya, again for the art. The visual arts in the English Renaissance were much less significant than in the Italian Renaissance. Ini kalau di Italia kan pada zaman Renaissance terkenal dengan Leonardo da Vinci dan segala macam ya, kamu tahu lukisannya. Tapi kalau di literature dari di Inggris lebih terkenal di literaturenya daripada visual lukisnya itu lukisannya. Nah in Elizabethan literature, the very famous literary culture are in drama and poetry. Itu ya. Jadi again short story is still not here, not yet. Jadi kalau misalnya tadi di Old Song Middle banyakkan puisi ya, di literature di zaman Renaissance di sini teater. Okay, so English Renaissance theater were the outstanding legacy of the period. Karena di sini zamannya William Shakespeare tadi, di sini muncullah tadi Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet dan karya-karyanya yang lain gitu ya. Makanya dikatakan in this period the theater were the outstanding legacy. On the slide you can see that the author, of course, it's not only William Shakespeare, but there are many other authors in this period. Francis Bacon, ya, Thomas Baker, John Donne, Fletcher, Ford, ya, silakan dibaca sendiri ya. Di situ ada banyak. Christopher Marlowe. Yeah, here are the names that were famous in the Renaissance period. Okay, now we move to the neoclassical period. So in this period, it is divided into three. It is called the Restoration, and then Augustan Age, and then Age of Johnson. So, ini lebih ke sejarahnya ya. Jadi untuk Restoration itu adalah zaman. So do you remember that I said before there is one age in Commonwealth period where England was not ruled by a king. Ya kan ada kan tadi saya sebut ya. Jadi setelah zamannya Renaissance, anaknya King Charles yang kalah perang tadi, yang dipenggal, anaknya itu kan dikirim, diasingkan. So he was exiled, but then later he came back. He came back to take over the throne. That's why in the neoclassical period, the very first period was called the Restoration. Karena di situ is the restoration of the monarchy and the drama. Nah, jadi in the age of Commonwealth period, di zaman kaum Puritan menguasai, itu drama was prohibited to be performed outside, ya, publicly, tidak boleh. Itu jadi saya masak, walaupun dia adalah in the Elizabethan area, drama itu, teater itu adalah sesuatu yang benar-benar subur, but then come to the last age of the Renaissance, it became masa kelamnya, the dark age for theater, because of the rule of the Puritans that prohibited the theater. After the Restoration, it's also not only the restoration of the monarchy, but also the restoration of drama itself. The second age in this period is called Augustan Age, or also known as the Age of Pope, because Pope is the name of the famous author. And there's also the Age of Johnson. It's also the name of author. This age is also called as the Age of Transition. So let's move to the literature. So in the first half of the 18th century, English poets such as Alexander Pope and Jonathan Swift, they emulated the great Latin poets and reign of the Emperor Augustus. Jadi mereka tuh kayak berkiblat ke bukan berkiblat ke karya sebelumnya, walaupun Shakespeare terkenal ya, tidak ya, tapi dia berkiblat ke penulis-penulis di Roma. Ada Virgil, Horace, ya, ini semua adalah nama-nama yang let's say inspired, okay, Alexander Pope and Jonathan Swift for this period. Um, the Enlightenment is also the other name besides the Age of Reason. So in this Age of Reason, the work emphasized for reason over superstition. Jadi ini kayak bukan lagi kayak apa ya, superstition itu kayak apa sih bahasa Indonesianya? Hmm, ya jadi orang tuh menanyakan asalnya gitu, bukan cuma percaya gitu katanya gitu, tapi they ask why, they ask how gitu. This is the characteristic of the work in this period. Makanya dikatakan the age of reason. So for example, asking how the world worked. Jadi bukan cuma dari kok saya lupa sih superstition atau emang nanti silakan kamu cari ya. Jadi dia lebih memang sains ya. Jadi sudah mulai critical thinking lah, boleh dikatakan seperti itu ya. So it was different from the previous idea that people needed to rely on scripture or church authorities for knowledge. Ya, jadi zamannya sebelumnya kan emang gereja itu again, jadi ini sejarah pasti juga berhubungan dengan perkembangan agamanya ya. Jadi zaman sebelumnya neoklasikal itu kan dikuasai oleh kaum gereja. Jadi tidak lagi gereja istilahnya ada tetap they have power but it's not like absolute seperti sebelumnya ya. Di sini karena because people start to ask the reason how something happened. And in this period, there was also the rise of middle class. And then the emergence of coffee house, where gentlemen sat and discussed periodicals. Periodicals itu nama koran, semacam koran ya. Jadi muncullah coffee house di zaman ini. There is also the rise of newspapers and the return of public theater. Tadi sudah ada Age of Restoration ya. Jadi kembalinya public theater ini ada perubahan. Of course there is change. There is change that makes it different from previous one. So after the after the dark age for the theater, I'm sorry. The topic is different. Kalau di situ, kalau zaman-zamannya kan banyak romance, tragedy dan segala macam ya. Oh, I'm really sorry. But here it's more about saya salah itu ya. Kok saya lupa namanya. I'm sorry. Ya kayak satire. Satire. Jadi dia satire di zaman ini. Jadi dia kayak komedi juga, tapi dia komedinya satire. Jadi menyindir gitu ya, bukan karena setelah Dark Ages, setelah masa-masa kelam dari perang saudara itu, jadi orang maunya karya yang mereka tonton itu tidak lagi tentang hal yang tragedi ya, seperti endingnya Romeo and Juliet atau Hamlet dan segala macam, tapi mereka mau yang lucu. Tapi sini lucunya bukan lucu yang asal lucu ya, tapi ada sindiran di dalamnya. And then it's also the birth of a novel, as the middle class had time for leisure and wanted entertainments. Jadi tidak muncul novel, walaupun tidak banyak. Sekali lagi nanti novel itu bagusnya kan di Victorian. Lalu penulis wanita juga muncul, and even they may came on stage ya, karena kalau zaman sebelumnya tidak boleh ada perempuan di atas panggung, but here after the restoration many things changed ya. And it's the first age of literary criticism, where essays on the virtues and weakness of authors. And so the poetry is commonly written in heroic couplet. Couplet itu seperti ini. Heroic couplet consists of two rhyming lines. Jadi couplet itu ya couple ya, dua, dan dia isinya iambic pentameter. Nanti part 1 puisi ya, saya jelaskan lebih lanjut apa yang dimaksud dengan iambic pentameter. So iambic pentameter is also one of the characteristic of William Shakespeare's poem ya. walaupun sebenarnya pelopornya bukan William tapi Chaucer di zaman Middle English. So here the example Harry Couplet, which is famous during the neoclassical period. Oh sorry, leher saya gatal sekali. To err is human, to forgive divine. This is a word from Alexander Pope in his essay on criticism. Next is the Romantic period. Romantic period. The name is not about, although the name is romantic, but the work in this period is not about romance. Okay, just because the name is romantic doesn't mean that the work is about romance. So this period is, oh my god, affected by French Revolution. Ya jadi penulis peninjauan ini ada revolusi Prancis ya. Kok kamu ingat Napoleon Bonaparte? Ya benar nggak saya sebut namanya itu? Ya jadi itu kan French Revolution pada saat itu, dan sejarah peristiwa besar di Prancis itu mempengaruhi kemudian tulisan para penulis di Inggris. And this also the starting of industrial revolution. Kalau kalian tahu juga tentang sejarah revolusi industri, tentu tahu ya bahwa di sini adalah zaman di mana mesin. Okay, industrial revolution kan itu zaman yang membuat kemudian British jadi negara kaya gitu ya. Tapi di satu sisi kaya, tapi di satu sisi juga membuat masyarakatnya ya pada jenjangnya terlihat jelas ya gitu. So this is the starting of romantic period. Puncak nanti bukan di zamannya romantic tapi di zamannya Victorian untuk puncak tentang industrial revolution itu. Lalu agriculture revolution yang dimaksud itu adalah ada apa ya? So ini ada sedikit penjelasannya ya. So in agriculture revolution, it produced more food and caused more workers in the countryside. Jadi banyak yang ke daerah gitu untuk menghasilkan makanan gitu ya, bekerja. However, later the development and advancement of tools and machines decreased the demand for rural labor. Jadi para pekerja yang datang ternyata harus menerima kenyataan bahwa mereka tergantikan oleh mesin. So mereka yang yang awalnya ke desa hanya menumpuk gitu ya. So this increasingly restricted access to land and forced many rural workers to migrate to cities. Jadi mereka yang di desa kemudian bermigrasi ke kota, apa sih namanya, urban ya, melakukan urbanisasi ke kota. Sorry, saya sambil mencari air minum nih. Oh my god, sorry. Dan mereka yang kemudian ikut ke kota, pindah ke kota itu jadi penyebab sendiri lagi di kota London. Ya, jadi the labor demand created by industrial revolution were a bad working condition, pollution, criminality, and corruption. Jadi ada itu seperti saya bilang bahwa memang meningkatkan kesejahteraan di satu sisi, tapi di sisi lain juga ada bad side effect-nya. Sorry. So in literature, the Romantic period began with the publication of Relica Ballads, which is the first collection of poems by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. This period can be seen as a rejection of any topic from the previous period. Jadi kalau tadi Age of Reason in classical period kan disebutkan bahwa it's the period of reason, so where people ask how things happen gitu ya. But in the Romantic period, it's more on imagination, emotion, and individual sensibility. This is the characteristic of the literary work in this period. So the names for the authors at this period ada William Wordsworth yang terkenal banget tentu. Ada banyak ya, silakan dibaca aja. Saya pindah dulu karena masih ada lagi yang lain. Nah ini, for the characteristics of literary work for this period, ini ya. Jadi romantic play tadi kan ada saya sebut bahwa dia imagination, emotion, dan dia banyak bercerita tentang alam. So glorification of nature. And then awareness and acceptance of emotions, celebration of artistic creativity and imagination, emphasis on aesthetic beauty, nature person, tapi sekali lagi kebanyakan tentang nature ya. Themes of solitude, loneliness, alone, quiet, focus on exoticism and history, spiritual, and so description use of personification. Personification itu dalam you compare an inanimate object who can act like a human, like human. That's personification. While for vivid sensory descriptions itu karena puisinya kebanyakan menggunakan imagery. Imagery itu artinya when you read it, you can visualize. Okay, you can visualize it in your head. Jadi ketika dia menyebutkan taman misalnya, itu jelas bagaimana bentuk tamannya, you can visualize it. That's why it's called the use of imagery untuk zaman ini. Ya. Contohnya nih, I wandered lonely as a cloud. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high valleys and hills. When all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Kelihatan ya, jadi ada valley, ada hillsnya, ada bunga, lalu ada danau, ya, ada pohon, ya itu bunga-bunganya gitu ya. Jadi ini sudah imagery-nya menggunakan imagery visual karena kita bisa melihat danaunya, melihat pohonnya, ya. Ada juga di imagery-nya berupa merasakan, ya itu ada kata breeze, itu kan kalau semacam angin dia dirasakan, dia dilihat ya, nah, seperti itu. Jadi itu yang disebut dengan imagery. So imagery use 5 of senses. Jadi melihat, mendengar, apa gitu, mencium, ya aroma juga seperti itu. Merasakan dia ke kulit, nah, itu dimaksud dengan imagery. One of the characteristic of romantic period. We move to the Victorian period, which is saya tadi tidak pernah sebut tahunnya, 1837 to 1901. The Victorian period means, yes, it's just like Elizabethan period, which means the country is ruled by Elizabeth. Here, Victorian period means the period is led by Queen Victoria. So Victorian period began with the coronation of Queen Victoria. Ada filmnya, kalau saya tidak salah, ya, Queen Victoria. Yang main itu, saya lupa namanya. Ya, tapi tentang itu focus on her love story with Prince Albert. Ya, maaf saya salah ingatnya. Jadi itu Queen Victoria. Dia memerintah di umur yang cukup muda. Britain economics grows thanks to the emergence of railway and steamship networks combined with the invention of the electric telegraph. So here you can see that the industrial revolution started to show its growth. Ya, jadi sudah muncul railway, steamship, lalu ada electric telegraph, dan segala macam ya. So this was the age of imperialism. Jadi mulai menjajah mereka British colonies. But then sekali lagi tadi ya, revolution terjadi. It brought some issues in the society, like the rising population, rural unemployment, the migration to the towns, together with the terrible conditions where many people lived and worked. Saya tidak tahu apa kamu pernah at least nonton ya. Kalau novel mungkin karena kalian your background is not literature, so probably you never read about Oliver Twist before, or let's say Sherlock Holmes ya. When you have watched the condition of Sherlock Holmes, ya itu kan bisa kelihatan lah ya bagaimana kotanya itu kotor gitu ya. Di London ya, London terkenal dengan berbagai macam orang kayanya segala macam, but then lingkungannya ya. Bisa kamu lihat. Um, ya, kayak itu. Lalu kita lanjut untuk literaturenya. So Victorians and their literature were asking ethical questions in a lot of different ways. But utilitarianism, what makes you happy? Jadi itu inti pertanyaan adalah what makes you happy. Jadi bukan lagi tentang nature, karena tadi sudah pindah ya ke kota. Jadi yang disampaikan sudah bukan lagi tentang nature. Beda dengan periode sebelumnya. So Victorian novels tend to be idealized portraits of difficult lives in which hard work, perseverance, love and luck win out in the end. They were usually inclined towards being of improving nature with the central moral lesson at heart. However, it tend to change as the time passed. Jadi awalnya mungkin kan masih apa ya, periode awal masih berpengaruh nature tadi, tapi but then it change over time. Tadi ada gitu kan, kamu lihat Sir Arthur Conan Doyle itu kan pengarangnya Sherlock Holmes, makanya jangan heran kalau ya Sherlock Holmes itu kondisinya sedikit banyak menggambarkan bagaimana keadaan di zaman Victoria. Ya, ada Bronte sisters, Christina Rossetti, Robert Browning, and etc. Oh yeah, there's also one name here is Charles Dickens. So Charles Dickens is also very famous, a very famous author. I don't know if you have watched the animation of the movie Christmas Carol. Ada animasinya kalau saya tidak salah. Itu adalah ditulis oleh Charles Dickens. So it's not bukan film kartun masalahnya ya, tapi dia adalah novel. And there's also Oliver Twist. Yeah. So there are many things. Great Expectation. Sorry, itu juga salah satu novelnya. So yeah, Charles Dickens is a very famous one. Saya kemarin sempat dikasih film juga sama teman about his life. Jadi yang melatar belakangi terbitnya novel Christmas Carol. Itu ada, silakan cari. Filmnya bagus. We move to the last one. It's the modern period. So modernism is a period in literary history which started around the early 1900s and continued until the early 1944s, or since the beginning of World War in 1914. Yeah. This period is marked by a strong and intentional break with tradition. Jadi penandanya modern period is want to show that the work in this period is totally different from the work in Victorian. So jadi it's not only about religious anymore, about political, social views. Jadi what you think is good in Victorian is not in this period. Okay. So in this period also grow the critical thinking, which was distinguished from previous period. Jadi previous period kan sekali lagi ratu ya, banyak ini. Jadi apa yang pemerintah katakan, people just accept it. Di modern period tidak. And then declination of sentiments and value, where modern world people were more into independence. Love is less of a romance and more like greed, even sex. Jadi kalau zaman sebelumnya kan love itu indah penggambarannya, but for the modern period tidak seindah itu lagi. Yeah. Therefore, the literature of modern period having less zeal for love, natural beauty, and the sentiments. Jadi karya pada zaman ini tidak lagi berkurang lagi tentang romance, cinta yang indah gitu ya. Kalau kamu mau bertanya indah maksudnya seperti apa sih? Saya harap kamu pernah nonton Pride and Prejudice lah ya. Itu kan tentang romance seorang perempuan pada zaman itu yang banyak membaca, beda dengan perempuan pada zaman tersebut gitu lah. Tapi itu kisah cintanya ya digambarkan dengan indah seperti itu. So it's not about sex, it's not about revenge mungkin ya, tidak. Tapi memang bagaimana cinta itu terbentuk. So that's what I mean. Love is beautiful. Love is beautifully described in the previous period, but for this modern one, it's more like tadi, but greed ya, ketamakan, and even sex. Indah lagi gitu. So this period is not about natural beauty anymore or sentiments. Yang terkenal adalah here. The pillars of modernism. Here are some names that I can give you. Ya jadi untuk novel memang sudah muncul di zaman romantik, tapi sekali lagi the very famous one apa ya, yang paling extraordinary growth of the novel is in Victorian period. Setelahnya itu udah banyak. Sementara teater ya mengalami tetap ada of course, tapi ada kemunduran, tidak terkenal like in Elizabethan period in the Renaissance. Yeah, I think that's all for the brief introduction of British literature. So you see, as a conclusion, I can tell you that these periods hold a very important, significant influence for the works that are produced in each period. So every period has its own characteristic, which makes them different from the previous or the following period. Jadi kalau ditanya ini batasan-batasannya, ya tentu para ahli sudah mengkaji sampai tahun di mana kemudian peristiwa penting itu menjadi batas untuk periode tertentu. Makanya ada dikatakan old, ada dikatakan middle, ada dikatakan renaissance, kan? Dikatakan terakhir dikatakan the modern period. I hope this brief explanation from me. I believe there are many things that I missed to explain to you. Tapi sekali karena saya hanya brief saja, saya menyampaikan apa yang lebih banyak kepada literaturenya. Untuk kondisi historinya bisa kamu cek lebih lanjut nanti untuk tugas berikutnya, ya. Jadi untuk pekan depan I will tell you the instruction after I end this video. So thank you so much for staying awake until the end of this period, karena saya tahu ketika kita membahas sejarah biasanya orang cenderung tertidur ya. Jadi I hope you're still awake until now, until the end of this period, and thank you so much for that. And yeah, I think I need to end this video now. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good morning.